The dropship's engines rumbled through the dense jungle air, sending ripples across the canopy below. Captain Mira Vasquez tightened her grip on the strap securing her rifle, her gloved fingers adjusting the worn leather as the shuttle jolted. The other soldiers barely acknowledged her, their metallic armor gleaming under the flickering red lights of the troop bay. Their uniforms, pristine and unmarred by battle, belonged to men who had never once crawled through the dirt, who had never felt the weight of a battlefield press against their bones. A scoff cut through the low murmur of voices. "So, this is the legendary human sniper?" The voice was laced with condescension, belonging to a man draped in the insignia of the Galactic Empire's elite. His silver-plated gauntlets tapped idly against his thigh as he studied her with unveiled amusement. "Tell me, Vasquez, how does it feel knowing your kind is obsolete?" Mira exhaled through her nose, her expression unreadable beneath the shadow of her hood. She had heard it all before. The Empire's soldiers believed in technology over skill, in brute force over precision. To them, the sniper rifle slung across her back was a relic, a toy compared to their drone-guided plasma cannons and auto-targeting visors. A second voice, deeper and more authoritative, joined the mockery. "Let's not be too hard on her," Colonel Joran said with a smirk, arms folded across his chest. "After all, she's only human. Limited eyesight, slow reflexes, archaic weapons. We can't expect much." The laughter that followed was short-lived, cut off as the dropship lurched. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing their descent. Mira barely reacted. Instead, she adjusted the sights of her rifle, ignoring the sneering glances cast her way. She had no interest in changing their minds. They would see the truth soon enough. The doors hissed open, revealing a world of emerald shadows and twisted undergrowth. The planet, designated Serenth 9, was an uncharted nightmare of dense jungle and unpredictable terrain. It had swallowed entire squads of Empire soldiers whole, their bodies never recovered. The mission was simple, or at least, it had been before the Empire's arrogance got in the way. A small enemy outpost had taken root deep in the jungle, a reconnaissance post for a rival faction. The Empire wanted it neutralized. Boots hit the dirt in synchronized motion, armored figures fanning out in precise formation. Mira stepped down last, letting the weight of the jungle settle around her. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves, the distant call of unseen creatures echoing through the trees. Joran strode ahead, his presence commanding even in the vast wilderness. He turned slightly, addressing the gathered soldiers. "We move in standard formation. Our scanners will detect any hostiles before they detect us. Stay close, follow orders, and try not to get lost." His gaze flickered toward Mira, his smirk returning. "And if the sniper gets nervous, try not to let her slow us down." More laughter, but Mira remained impassive. She had no intention of justifying herself to men who had never known what it was like to trust their own instincts, to rely on the steady weight of a rifle rather than a blinking red light on a screen. The march began, the Empire's troops moving with precision, their heavy boots crushing the underbrush beneath them. Mira moved differently, her steps silent, her senses attuned to the rhythm of the jungle. She could feel the eyes on her, the lingering gazes of soldiers who expected her to falter. An hour passed before the first sign of trouble appeared. The terrain sloped downward into a gully, a natural choke point that any seasoned soldier would recognize as a potential kill zone. Mira slowed, her grip tightening on her rifle. Something was off. The jungle was too still, the air too thick with something unspoken. "Hold," she murmured, her voice low. The Empire's soldiers ignored her, pressing forward. "Stop." This time, her voice carried weight. A flicker of irritation passed through Joran's eyes as he turned. "You do not give orders here, Vasquez," he said coolly. "Our scanners show nothing. If there were hostiles, we'd know." Mira didn't move. She didn't need scanners. She could feel it. The silence was too unnatural, the absence of birds, insects, life itself seemed to have retreated. She lowered herself into a crouch, eyes narrowing. The leaves ahead had been disturbed, unnaturally so. The pattern was too precise, as if deliberately altered. "A trap." "Landmines," she said, her voice flat. "Trip wires." Maybe motion-activated turrets. Joran scoffed. Impossible. Our technology means nothing against a patient enemy. Mira pulled a small device from her belt, activating its thermal scanner. Unlike the Empire systems, hers wasn't designed for sweeping scans. It was for subtle movements, small disturbances in heat signatures. And there they were, thin, nearly invisible lines of heat, stretching across the gully like a spider's web. Joran's face darkened as he registered the implications. If they had continued forward, the first step would have triggered an instant massacre. Mira rose to her full height. Still think I'm obsolete? For the first time, silence greeted her words. The Empire's soldiers shifted uneasily. They had mocked her, dismissed her, but now they were forced to acknowledge that she had saved their lives. Joran's jaw clenched. "We go around," he ordered, the smugness drained from his voice. "Vasquez, take point." She didn't need the validation. She didn't need an apology. She simply moved forward, leading them safely through the jungle. The enemy outpost was still miles ahead, and they had already come too close to death. The Empire's arrogance had nearly cost them everything. And Mira knew this was only the beginning. The jungle thickened as they pressed forward, its dense canopy swallowing the last remnants of daylight. Vines coiled like silent sentries, draped over twisted trunks, their leaves slick with moisture. The air was heavy, damp with the scent of decaying foliage, and every breath carried the earthy weight of the untamed wild. Mira Vasquez moved with the terrain, her footfalls quiet against the loamy ground, while the Empire's soldiers trudged ahead with less care, their bulky armor snagging against the underbrush. They had adjusted their formation since the near disaster at the gully. Mira now led, though it was an unspoken concession. Joran hadn't admitted his mistake, but the way his soldiers watched her, the way their fingers hovered closer to their triggers, told her enough. They weren't laughing anymore. The enemy outpost was still miles ahead, hidden somewhere within the labyrinth of green. The Empire's advanced scanners had proven useless against the thick vegetation, unable to penetrate the layered density of the jungle. That, at least, didn't surprise Mira. No system was infallible, and war didn't favor the overconfident. A whisper of movement flickered at the edge of her vision. Mira froze, raising a closed fist. The Empire's soldiers, though reluctant, obeyed. Their weapons hummed as they primed their targeting systems, visors sweeping the trees with blinking red grids. Nothing. Her pulse remained steady. It wasn't the first time she had sensed something just beyond sight, a presence that vanished before it could be confirmed. The jungle had eyes, even if she couldn't yet see them. Joran stepped closer, voice low. "What is it?" "Something's tracking us." One of the soldiers behind him scoffed, shifting impatiently. "More ghosts?" "Your instincts don't override our tech. If there was something out there, we'd know." Mira ignored him. She lowered herself to one knee, brushing her fingers across the damp ground. The soil was disturbed, subtle, but deliberate. Too many indentations, some shallower than others. A staggered formation. Someone had been here recently. She straightened. "They're moving ahead of us. Waiting." Joran frowned. His gaze flicked toward the path ahead, then back to his scanner. "I'm getting nothing." Mira slung her rifle off her shoulder, eyes narrowing. "Then they know how to hide from you." She took another step forward, slow and deliberate, gaze scanning the undergrowth. The jungle was too quiet again. No insects, no rustling leaves. Silence was a weapon, and right now, it was being aimed directly at them. A single leaf fluttered down from above, spiraling lazily toward the ground. A warning. Mira turned sharply, raising her rifle. "Cover!" Gunfire erupted. The jungle exploded into chaos, flashes of light carving through the thick foliage. Mira dove, rolling behind the gnarled roots of a massive tree as plasma bolts hissed through the air, scorching the bark where she had stood seconds before. The Empire's soldiers scrambled, their rigid formation shattering under the sudden onslaught. Figures emerged from the shadows, their movements swift and precise. The enemy wore dark, matte armor, built for stealth rather than brute force. Their weapons were modified for the environment, Silent projectile rifles instead of energy-based ones. No heat signatures, no tracers, no warning. The Empire's troops struggled. Their helmets were built for open battlefield engagements, reliant on augmented visuals and HUD displays. Here, in the shifting maze of green, they were blind. Mira moved before thought could catch up, raising her rifle and lining up a shot. The first enemy fell with a quiet exhale, a hole between his eyes before his body crumpled into the undergrowth. She adjusted, fired again, another target down. The jungle belonged to those who understood patience, not brute force. A scream cut through the air as one of the Empire's soldiers was dragged into the foliage, his body disappearing before the others could react. The remaining troops fired wildly, their panic evident. Joran snarled, pressing himself against a tree. "Where the hell are they? My visor's useless." Mira didn't answer. She was already moving, weaving through the battlefield with practiced ease. The enemy was picking them apart, isolating them, using the jungle as their ally. This wasn't just an ambush, it was a hunt. A shadow moved to her left. She pivoted, squeezing the trigger. The enemy soldier fell, his rifle clattering against the ground. Another shape flickered behind her. Mira spun, knife already in hand, and drove the blade into his throat before he could react. Joran was shouting orders, trying to regain control, but the Empire's soldiers were breaking. They weren't trained for this kind of warfare. They relied too much on systems that no longer worked. Another soldier collapsed, a blade buried in his chest. The Empire's forces were dwindling. If they didn't adapt, they'd all be dead within minutes. Mira exhaled sharply. "Fall back." Joran turned to her, eyes blazing. "We do not retreat." A bolt whizzed past his head, barely missing him. Mira didn't wait for an argument. She grabbed his arm, yanking him behind cover. "This isn't a battlefield. It's a goddamn slaughterhouse. If you stay here, you die." For the first time, real hesitation flickered in Joran's gaze. A movement in the corner of her eye, an enemy taking aim. Mira didn't think. She pushed Joran down, firing in the same motion. The shot took the enemy in the chest, sending him sprawling backward. That was enough to break whatever stubborn resolve Joran had left. Regroup. Defensive positions. The surviving Empire soldiers scrambled, falling into a tighter formation as they retreated toward a rock outcrop, putting their backs to solid cover. Mira covered their movements, her rifle steady, every shot precise. By the time they reached the outcrop, only 6 Empire soldiers remained. Their breaths came in ragged gasps, armor slick with sweat and dirt. The jungle pressed in around them, a living entity waiting to consume them whole. Joran wiped a streak of blood from his face, his expression grim. His arrogance had been stripped away, replaced with something raw. Mira reloaded her rifle. "They won't stop hunting us. We're in their territory now." Joran's jaw clenched. He had no argument left. The jungle had chosen its victors. And this time, the Empire wasn't among them. The jungle had grown darker, the canopy overhead thick enough to swallow the last remnants of light. The air clung to Mira Vasquez's skin, damp and heavy, carrying the metallic tang of blood and the acrid scent of burned foliage. Around her, the Empire's remaining soldiers crouched behind the jagged rock outcrop, their breaths uneven, their eyes darting to every shifting shadow. They had lost too many. 6 of them remained, battered and exhausted, their once pristine armor smeared with dirt and sweat. They had entered the jungle believing themselves untouchable. Now, they knew better. Joran's hands curled into fists as he scanned their surroundings, his jaw locked so tightly it looked like it might crack. "They've stopped attacking," he murmured, voice low enough that only Mira caught it. She didn't answer. Silence could mean many things. The enemy could be repositioning, setting another ambush, or simply waiting for them to break. But Mira had learned long ago that the deadliest threats weren't always the ones that lurked unseen. Sometimes, they announced themselves. The ground trembled beneath them. A distant, rhythmic pounding, metal against earth. Myra's pulse steadied, her instincts sharpening. This wasn't an ambush. It was something worse. Joran stiffened as the noise grew louder, vibrating through the jungle floor. What the hell is that? Mira lifted her rifle, peering through the scope. The dense foliage obscured her view, but movement in the distance caught her eye. Branches swayed unnaturally, trees bending against an unseen force. Then, through the gaps in the leaves, she saw it. A war machine. It emerged like a hulking nightmare, towering over the jungle, its reinforced legs crushing everything beneath them. A mechanized artillery walker, plated in dark armor, its weapon system shifting as it scanned the terrain. Twin plasma cannons lined its flanks, each one capable of vaporizing a squad in seconds. A mounted railgun rotated above, its barrel gleaming beneath the glow of its targeting sensors. This wasn't just a weapon, it was an executioner. Joran took a step back, his bravado unraveling. That's impossible. The enemy wasn't supposed to have heavy artillery here. Myra's grip tightened on her rifle. It didn't matter what they were supposed to have. Reality didn't care for arrogance. The machine's head swiveled, locking onto their position. Move! Mira didn't wait for them to react. She dove, rolling across the damp earth just as the first plasma bolt shattered the rock they had been using for cover. Shards of stone exploded outward, searing through the air like shrapnel. One of the soldiers screamed as he was thrown backward, his armor melting at the edges. Joran dragged another soldier behind a fallen log, his movements sharp, mechanical. How do we kill that thing? Mira adjusted her scope, scanning the walker's frame. It was built for frontline combat, meant to crush resistance, not pick through dense terrain. That was their only advantage. The jungle. The trees limited its movement, slowed its ability to turn. But that wouldn't save them for long. She exhaled slowly. We don't kill it. I do. Joran's head snapped toward her. That's suicide. Mira ignored him. She had no time for arguments. She shifted her rifle, adjusting the weight against her shoulder. The walker had weaknesses, every machine did. The joints in its legs were reinforced, but not invulnerable. The real flaw, though, was in its targeting system. A single module, no larger than a fist, embedded near the head. If she could hit it, she could disable its ability to track them. One shot. That was all she had. She pressed against the earth, crawling through the undergrowth as the machine fired another blast. Trees snapped like brittle twigs, the heat from the plasma scorching the air. Mira stayed low, feeling the vibrations of each step the walker took. It was moving slowly, recalibrating, searching for survivors. Joran's voice crackled through her earpiece. Vasquez, you can't take that thing down alone. She didn't respond. Her breath was steady, her muscles coiled with precision. She raised her rifle, angling her scope toward the machine's head. The targeting module was small, almost impossible to hit at this distance. But impossible wasn't a word Mira believed in. Her finger rested lightly against the trigger. Wind shifted through the leaves. The machine's railgun adjusted. Mira could feel it. The moment it locked onto her position, the moment before it would fire. She exhaled. The shot cracked through the jungle like a thunderclap. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the walker shuddered violently, sparks erupting from its head as the targeting module exploded in a shower of broken metal. The machine staggered, its movements erratic, its weapons shifting wildly. Mira didn't stop. She adjusted her aim and fired again, this time at the exposed wiring beneath its chassis. Another shot, another explosion. The walker lurched, its legs buckling, its massive frame collapsing into the trees with a deafening crash. Silence followed. Mira remained still, rifle raised, breath measured. Smoke curled from the wreckage, the once unstoppable war machine now nothing more than a broken husk. Joran stared at her, his disbelief etched into every rigid line of his face. The remaining soldiers looked at her not with mockery, but with something else entirely. Something like respect. Mira slung her rifle over her shoulder. Still think I'm obsolete? Joran didn't answer. He didn't need to. The jungle was still dangerous. The enemy was still out there. But for the first time, the Empire's soldiers weren't just following Mira out of necessity. They were following because they knew, without a doubt, that she was their best chance of making it out alive. The jungle smoldered in eerie silence, the charred wreckage of the war machine casting jagged shadows against the twisted foliage. Smoke curled upward, struggling to pierce the dense canopy, its acrid scent thick in the humid air. The only sounds that remained were the distant echoes of dying embers and the ragged breaths of those who had survived. Mira Vasquez stood motionless, her rifle still warm in her hands. The weight of it was familiar, steady, but the battle was over. At least, for now. The Empire's soldiers lingered near the wreckage, their postures rigid with a mixture of exhaustion and unease. None of them spoke. None of them laughed. The arrogance that had once coated their every word had been stripped away, burned to ash along with their illusions of superiority. Joran wiped a streak of sweat and blood from his brow. His armor dented, his stance no longer as sure as it had been before they stepped onto this cursed world. He turned to Mira, his gaze unreadable. "You killed a war machine with a single shot," he said, the words heavy, reluctant. Mira slid the bolt of her rifle back, checking the chamber before snapping it into place. "2 shots," she corrected. The others exchanged uneasy glances. They weren't used to seeing someone they couldn't explain. The Empire had trained them to believe in technology, in numbers, in overwhelming force. And yet, a lone sniper with an outdated rifle had just accomplished what their advanced weaponry could not. One of the soldiers shifted, his voice hesitant. "How did you know where to aim?" Mira met his gaze. "I looked." The simplicity of her answer unsettled them. She didn't need a visor, a targeting system, or a drone to tell her how to fight. She saw. She understood. And that terrified them more than any enemy they had faced in this jungle. Joran exhaled sharply, glancing toward the distant horizon. "We need to move. The outpost is still ahead, and I don't want to wait around to see what else they've got." Mira adjusted the strap of her rifle and turned without a word. She had no interest in debates, no patience for wounded pride. If they had learned anything from this, it would be in their actions, not in their words. They moved in silence. The jungle, once alive with unseen threats, now seemed to hold its breath. The remaining soldiers were different now. They followed her, not because they had been ordered to, but because they understood that in this terrain, Mira Vasquez was the only reason they were still alive. Hours passed. The sky above remained hidden beneath endless layers of green, but Mira could feel the time slipping away, the unseen march of night creeping closer. The enemy outpost was near. She could sense it in the subtle shifts of the landscape, the unnatural stillness of the trees. Joran raised a fist, signaling a halt. The group pressed themselves into the underbrush, eyes scanning ahead. Mira dropped into a crouch, lifting her scope to survey the land beyond. There it was. The outpost was small, built into the side of a rocky incline, its defenses crude but efficient. A network of automated turrets lined the perimeter, their sensors sweeping methodically. Guard patrols moved in precise patterns, their weapons sleek, modified for jungle warfare. This wasn't just a listening post, it was a forward operating base. A staging ground for something larger. Joran cursed under his breath. Command said this was just a recon site. "They were wrong," Mira said flatly. Joran's expression darkened. "We need to call in reinforcements." Mira adjusted her scope, tracking the movements of the guards. "No time. They'll see our transmission the second we send it." One of the soldiers, a younger man with a deep gash running down his cheek, swallowed hard. "So, what do we do?" Mira lowered her rifle, eyes narrowing. "We end this." Joran exhaled slowly, his hesitation clear. But then, something changed. He nodded. "What's the plan?" Mira allowed herself a small, grim smile. They were finally asking the right question. She pointed toward the turrets. "They're automated. But they aren't designed for precision. They rely on movement signatures. We trigger them at the right time, and we turn them into weapons against their own men." Joran's gaze flickered with something almost like respect. "And the patrols?" Mira shifted her rifle against her shoulder. "I'll handle them." No one argued. The jungle became their ally once more, its shadows wrapping around them like a cloak. Mira moved first, her steps as silent as the wind. The guards had no idea they were already dead. The first fell before he could register the whisper of her shot. The second barely had time to turn. She moved like a ghost, invisible until it was too late. By the time the others engaged, it was already over. Joran and his men executed the rest of the plan with ruthless efficiency. The automated turrets, fooled by carefully placed diversions, turned on their own, cutting down what remained of the enemy force. When it was done, when the final shot had echoed through the night, the jungle fell into silence once more. Joran stepped forward, surveying the carnage. His soldiers, what was left of them, stood at his back, their faces drawn, their bodies worn. Mira slung her rifle over her shoulder and turned away. "Your empire thinks it owns war," she said, her voice quiet. "But war doesn't care about machines. It doesn't care about rank." She met Joran's gaze. "War belongs to those who understand it." For once, Joran had no response. As the jungle swallowed them again, Mira knew one thing for certain. They had won this battle. But something else was coming. Something worse. And this time, even she wasn't sure if they were ready.